Guys, before we get stuck into this one, I just want you to have a look at this. Take a look at this guy in the Aero Australia kit, cuts across the group, goes behind the crowd and comes out by the telephone box. He did this twice in this race. What are your thoughts on it? Just let me know. I'm not trying to hide it. So here we go again. This is last lap. Cuts across behind the crowd, telephone box, and is leagues in front. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in because he did it twice in a race. So it wasn't just a one-off. Right, guys, welcome back. We are doing London OG Z Monthly Racing. This is a lunchtime 12 p.m. event. Cat C. Bit slower this time. Slightly less people in the group. I think we end up with 49 people racing. A front group of about 25 to start with. I decided that I was going to try and race this one tactically. So this is a tactical advice piece. And bear in mind, I have horrible patience. I'm a very impatient person. I'm not very good at just kind of sitting there. But I'm now the fountain of all knowledge when it comes to cycling, because I have watched Netflix Unchained. So if you guys have any questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll be sure to give you my expert advice. Other than that, guys, I only do this because I enjoy it. I'm not professing to be any good at it. I just really, really, really love Zwift racing. I love cycling. So this is all fun for me. One thing I did notice, the difference is Zwift's done a few little updates to the game since Monday. There were a few, a few bugs in the system when everything was going down on Monday. So it's good to kind of get things to catch up. So the OG course, this race, if you don't know it, is a really long lead-in. And then it's 3 loops of London Loop. It's pretty much dead flat. There's, over the 13 miles or 22k, there really isn't any elevation. So it's all like, it's pretty chilled out in terms of, there is one small incline that we will, becomes a feature of the race, definitely. Our front group was about 25 people as we go under Blackfriars Bridge, which is all right. As I mentioned, 40 seconds down on our time from Monday night. So this was just a slower race, and I'll talk you through it. But I did decide I wanted to race this one tactically. So I sat at the back for as long as I could. And then I made the changes. I made the moves within the group when I felt I needed to. One of which will come up in a second. So we haven't gone out too hard. It's been all right coming down Lower Thames Street, coming onto Embankment. Group of maybe 30 odd at this point, which is quite a lot of people. And I know there's a little climb as you come up to Piccadilly Circus. So I just thought, well, look, let's take the group out on this climb. Here we go. There's a big right-hander coming up. And I thought, look, let's take the group out on this climb, see what happens, and see if we can get the group to split a little bit, maybe drop a few people. So I go a little bit harder, push into the climb early, guys. That's the key. I was pushing in before it even ramped up. And then a few guys cover the move, which was obviously nice because it meant that I wasn't just cycling off on my own. Loads of people like to work a bit harder on inclines. I think it's just the nature of the game, the nature of the way people like to ride. But I just thought it'd be interesting. 35 people is quite a lot for a group on a 45-person race. So I just thought it'd be great to split it up. You see on the mini-map, it does string out a little bit. Same as usual, kind of head off nice and fast. I didn't worry about trying to stay too near the front because I knew it would string out and then I'd just be able to kind of ride on the back, which was the plan. But reasonably good wattage, nothing too crazy, and a nice 151, 152 HR, which means I'm working. I did notice that my heart rate didn't actually get that high on this race, so I think there's quite a bit of fatigue playing in. But you look on the mini-map, top right, we've dropped a few people, which is all bueno, so that's good. Just thins the group out a little bit, shows that it's, this is a bit of a business race. I will say, in a second, I scooched through a whole load of the first lap because it's so slow. And I'm not trying to be obnoxious. It just was a really slow first lap. Once we got into it, my heart rate gets back down to 120, which is pedestrian. Anyway, it's a good group. I wanted to basically just sit on the back. I knew I'd have a bit more of a chance racing this event, seeing it was a bit slower. What I struggle with, or I've struggled with in the past, is going into a sprint for the finish when I'm already balls, when I'm jazzed, when I've been working hard to try and stay in the pack, that's when I've just got no sprint in me. So I just thought, well, maybe I'm working too hard to get to the point where it comes to sprint. And obviously, now that I have watched Netflix Unchanged and I know everything to do with cycling, there's reasons that people lead out sprinters. So I just thought, well, do you know what? Just use the group as your little domestique and lead out and kind of see whether you can play it smart. Although I will say when riding Zwift, it kind of feels a bit like cheating when you just kind of sit at the back the whole time and just wait for the sprint because you're not doing any of the work to move the group forward. So, but I don't think you can do everything. And that's the hard thing. You can't move the group forward and kind of be the lead out guy. And then also, maybe you can, maybe you're that good. But for me, I feel that sometimes I work too hard. And then on this race particularly, when you see my heart rate up here is like 124, 125, it's just not like we were very soft on this first lap. And then it kind of dawned on me. I was like, okay, well, if it's going to be soft, maybe this is my chance to ride it sensibly and try and just work the sprint, because my sprints, if I work too hard on that last lap coming into the sprint, my sprint ends up being like 600 watts, which is just, not to shame anyone, but like it just feels terrible. Whereas if I do like a time segment when I'm just riding, I'll hit 1100 watts on a sprint effort. So I did notice the pace was quiet. So look, I get in the chat and I said, let's take it up a bit on the incline, because this is a very slow first lap. And no one ever, I think only one person ever responded to any of my messages during the race. But I did just want to take it out on the incline, just because it felt, as much as I wanted to be sensible about it, it did feel like we were going quite slow, and it was somewhat frustrating. You can't complain it's going slow if you're not willing to get to the front and do a bit of the work. So we'll just speed through this bit. This is the section where the guy in the Aussie kit cuts the corner, and he did it twice, guys. I imagine that must be like a bug in the system, but for the same person to cut the corner twice. So here we go, cuts across, and he's obviously my picture of me is there in place of it this time. But you see him come out by the telephone box, and he's ahead. Obviously, it's completely pointless because he's now on his own, but and we end up catching him. But I mean, he did that twice, so maybe he has that the new steering compatibility thing that you can get with Zwift that I haven't bothered using yet. I have found that Zwift has been putting me in funny places on my bike. I don't use the steering part of the app. Anyway, here comes the incline. If I said, I live by the sword, die by the sword, I said, let's take it out on the hill. So if I say it, I got to stick with it. So I kind of moved to the front, put a bit of effort in, just so that I wasn't like that guy that sits at the back complaining that we're not going fast enough and then does nothing. If you're gonna make comments, then I feel like you got to kind of stand by them. So tried to work a little bit on the hill. A couple of guys, the two of the guys in front are actually the guys that placed on the podium. I think I end up picking up a second place in this race, which is, I'm pretty happy with. It looks like they're going to ride away from me. I'm not massively bothered about it, but I do put a little kick in just to try and make sure that I'm still in their wind. The group strings out a bit, and I think we do drop a few people after, ice. And I wanted to ride off the top because I wanted to make sure that anything we did stuck. So that's why I kind of moved to the front here, because I was like, look, if we're going to work the hill and create a bit of a gap, then we've got to make it stick, which basically means keeping the wattage on the flat. There looks like there's a bit of a break, but I don't think it's a break that sticks. Minimap, top right, little break. I don't think that break sticks. I kind of feel like I drop off a little bit just because I'm knackered, basically. Anyway, group comes back together. I think we drop a couple of people as we swing around the corner. No, we basically didn't drop anyone on that hill. But it did make the group work a little bit harder. I'm going to scooch through this lap because this is like the boring part of the loop. I will say lap 2 was a bit faster, which was cool, which was good. It was good to pick up the pace. It meant that there was like no real hiding, like even in the draft, you're still kind of semi-working. I did a few, I don't want to say pulls because it's just not what it is, But, you know, I was happy to work and keep the group moving forward. So this lap is not particularly exciting. But from considering I wanted to go into this race and race it tactically and basically sit on the back and then wait for the sprint, that's not really what I ended up doing. I ended up trying to change the pace of the race and dropping some comments in the chat and trying to suggest that we work the hills a little bit, because otherwise it just would have been an easy ride and then a sprint at the finish, which I don't know, it would have just meant that maybe someone that wasn't as strong a rider but was like a heavy dude with a good sprint could have won it. So I didn't want to kind of risk that. So I thought, all right, let's keep the group moving, and then every now and again just drop to the back and sit in the draft. Lap 2, nothing exciting happens except for it is a bit of a faster race. I think there's about 23 or 24 riders up in the front group now, and I don't know what happens on this corner. I don't think the Aussie guy that we've got in it I don't think he's able to cut the corner again. I didn't notice if he did. I don't think he does. But I did. It was interesting he did it twice, and he almost caught me out, because on the last lap, he really does cut the corner and get a bit of an advantage. But I guess he must be just steering himself, or I don't know what happened. But for Zwift to do that twice to the same person is a bit fishy. Anyway, this is the hill for the second time round. A couple of guys take on the push, get my positioning pretty good, decide that just stick with the front group. It felt like I didn't feel like anyone was going to ride away, but I also wanted to make sure that if there was a little split that I was definitely in the group. So I drop a power up just to stick with them. I don't think I'd intended to use it, but they did look like they were moving away quite quickly, and my legs were struggling. So I wanted to just make sure that they definitely ride off. I think we dropped 1 or 2 people on the hill, which is group strings out. But then you've really got, if you want this to stick, you've got to ride off the top. You've got to work hard to make it stick. So we definitely drop a few people, but the group comes back together, and it's a bit for nothing, really. Coming into the last lap now. So I don't really have any idea of who's going to do what, where, when, and how. No one's really stood out as someone that's been throwing down any attacks or kind of carrying the group forward. There is a guy who is wearing lederhosen, who I think his name is Rodriguez, and he's up there at the front on the left. He's the dude that wins the race during the sprint. His timing on the sprint was great, and his effort on the sprint was great. So I think he was actually quite keen to move the group forward. I see him up front every now and again. But other than that, it didn't really look like we were doing a huge amount. Right, we dive. At this point, it's still about just kind of staying in the group, staying in the pack, riding the draft. This part of the race, or the route, because it's a loop, it's just like you're not pushing wattage. I would comfortably, not that I would think I'd do well, but I definitely ride this as a Cat B event if it's kind of outside of peak hours, if that makes sense. I think you probably get more out of it, more of a workout out of it, because I love racing because it kind of gives me that really good motivation to push harder, but sometimes this race was just way softer than I thought it was going to be. 12 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, lunchtime, not huge numbers, good numbers but not huge, so it was always going to be a little bit softer. Still great to do it though, and it is a slightly different dynamic. So I stick in there's me promoting the What Life in the chat, because that's what I'm all about. So here we go, guys. This is coming in to the last lap, 2 miles to go, and I'm sat at the back holding a reasonable heart rate at 150. That's not working too hard. That's like a 155 is really like a steady race heart rate. Moon looks great, love it. Well done, Zwift. We're coming in. Here's the corner where my Aussie guy just cuts across again. Duck. He goes behind the spectators, cuts the corner, out by the phone box, and look at him. He's leagues ahead. Leagues ahead. You can see my face. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, did he just do that, and I think I dive in the chat and grab my phone, and I'm just like, how did that happen? So yeah, straight in the chat to be like, how did that guy just cut the corner and end up there? Impressive stuff. But anyway, I'm back of the group. Wattage isn't too crazy just yet. Hill's coming up. So if you know this route, or if you've done this race, it's this hill, recover into the sprint, basically. A few guys using their power-ups here, and if you use it here, I'm pretty sure you don't get another chance to get power-up for the finish line. So I was determined to save my power-up. The plan here is to stick with the group, don't let the leaders get too far away, recover at the top of the hill, and then just set yourself up for the sprint. That's like a loosey-goosey idea of what you got to do. I know this because obviously I rode it on Monday. It's now Wednesday. So positioning was pretty good. The group strings out. No one is ever going to ride off the front on this. The game dynamics on Zwift wants you to ride as a big group. Like, it really kind of encourages, or the way that the dynamics work on the game itself is like it strings you together. Like, there's a bit of like elasticity to it all. Which means that if the group strings out, it does give you half a chance to get back on, to get back in, which is why you'll often find people kind of like whiz past you in a group. That's the internal dynamics of the game. There's Rodriguez, the guy who wins in the Lederhosen, just to my right there. So you'll see when he times his sprint, and he does it pretty well, and then goes pretty hard. I don't know whether I'll be able to check his watts per kg. A couple of guys right off the front, which I thought was a nice, brave move. I really admire that. I think they took the hill out quite hard and then just kept the effort. If they had gone hard and just kept at it, would they have set themselves up a bit better? Who knows? But two guys, or is it one guy? Looks like maybe two guys right off the front. Like, I massively applaud that. I love it. I love the effort. But you're still 1k out from the finish. Peloton's coming through. We're moving reasonably well. 161 HR, so we're in that kind of like fast tempo zone for me. Having to work a little bit. Positioning, I'm pretty happy with, because we're basically setting ourselves up for the sprint now, guys, and trying to recover as much as possible. So you're in that kind of fine line between get a good position but don't work too hard. And I'm pretty happy with where I am now. And it all comes down to timing. I came off, when I did this Monday night, I came off that corner a little bit harder. I did what those two guys in the front were doing, just tried to ride it a little bit harder, and that completely balls me. So I was going to go for a different tactic this time, which was just time my sprint better. Wattage starts building up, guys. Watts. Top left, look at the watts. They start coming on. And then I think someone goes. Right, yeah, Rodriguez goes there. And then I am a bit late to the party. Ride, hold it, and then here we go. Few guys beat me to the punch on it, but I do put a half decent sprint down, even if I don't hold it for that long. I'm pretty happy with it. I managed to stave off a few efforts and then actually just pit that guy to the line. So apologies, Scud. But there we go. Great race. Loved it. Bing, bang, bosh.